It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. California, good on you, man. Over 70% of the good folks in California have had at least one of the shots on the way to getting vaccinated. Their rates of infection are lower. Their new cases are lower. They're doing the right stuff, doing what we should be doing, getting people access to the vaccine. Trying to do some smart policy stuff. I guess it's policy, isn't it? On a certain level. I look at Ohio. Ohio's got a governor, Republican governor, Mike DeWine, who has been trying, I guess, on a certain level. Out there going, oh, please, pretty please, do this, would you? Oh, please, begging of you, be responsible. To no avail. Ohio is slammed, evidently. They are seeing record hospitalizations and of people younger than 50. So it's younger people who are not. It's not just the old folks, because, truthfully, we probably killed most of them off. So it's now the younger people, and we're going to see more of this, especially as the months go forward. Evidently, you look at the numbers, and Ohio is not. They're not California. And their governor, like I said, keeps coming out and saying, can we do this? Can we move forward? Can we get some stuff done? Evidently, the state reported 3,715 COVID patients in hospitals, including over 1,000 people in ICU and 660 on ventilators. That's a problem. And again, as we've been saying, the healthcare system is finite. There are only so many ICU beds. And once you exceed that, and Ohio is looking like they're moving in that direction. Here's the thing. As where California, over 70% are got at least one. Ohio, only 53%. Still better than some of the states in the South that are not there. And seeing the massive explosion in what's going on. But it gives me this thought that there are differences between Democratic states and Republican-run states. That the states who are trying to do some policy initiatives, trying to encourage people to get vaccinated, moving in a direction to where, hey, you got to get it. We're seeing less people getting infected, less people getting sick, less people dying. Which, protecting the general welfare, kind of the thought. The places that are doing things, numbers going down. Places that are going, oh, hope, wish in one hand, in the other, we're getting the other. And what's interesting to me is the right-wing spin machine, the Fox death machine, had the little bow-tied guy again running around screaming that, and I love how Fox just reach back and pop something out of one of the orifices back there. The bow-tied guy said that, the whole reason that Joe Biden is mandating the vaccine for the military folks is because, well, he hates the military people. He said the point of mandatory vaccination is to identify sincere Christians in the ranks, the free thinkers, the men with the high testosterone levels, and anyone who does not love Joe Biden and make them leave immediately. And my first thought was, well, hold on a second. Give me a thought. Every military person that I've known over the last 20 years, they've been Republican voters. The tough guy thing, that's their thing. Hyper Christian, claim to be free thinkers, high testosterone levels, most certainly, and they hate Democrats. So isn't that everybody that you're talking about then, Tucker? Evidently no. But this is one of those moments where playing this theme, again, the big lie, everyone who doesn't get a vaccine hates Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whatever, whatever his argument is here, which is insane. Never mind the fact that if people, I've got tons of friends who've been in the military who say, day one, they jab you with everything. Now, these are people who are used to getting jabbed by things. Why now? Why this? Well, it's political. We've turned this in to the political. And what Fox News does better than anybody is spread the big lie. And look, we just had in the last term, the first talk radio cable news president, where the big lie every day, all the time, was right there front and center. And look, nothing as of a surprise to me when you look at what came out of this last administration. For instance, I mean, nothing surprises me. But for instance, there's a new book coming out, Peril, by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa, that basically says everything that we knew after the election up until January 6th was absolutely true. That there was a coup attempt going on, that it was planned, that it was coordinated, that they had a plan. Now we know, because of Woodward and Costa, that there was a memo. 2-page memo, because evidently Trump doesn't read more than that. 2 very simple pages, laying the coup out, a 6-point plan. And again, like I said, we already knew that this was being laid. We already know that this was the path that they were going to follow. What nobody had was the actual 2-page memo that tied, this is like the smoking gun that ties this to the White House, that this was the plan all along. And look, for people like me who have been following this all along, there's no surprise here. No surprise whatsoever. In fact, when the trial balloons were floated back in November, we were pointing out all of this stuff back then. What is new and what should be something that makes us pay attention is that it was coordinated. That one of the White House lawyers, this John Eastman, wrote up this memo and said, this is how we steal this election. This is how we usurp the ballot box. This is how we take an election that we've lost by almost 8 million votes and we turn this around in our favor. And what's interesting to me is it starts right on page 1, right on the first line, with the big lie. And the big lie was that there were alternate electors that states had sent. Because the theory in this was, and this is how the only way this could have played out, is if there were debates over who were the electors, if there were states that didn't certify their electors. They all did, which is why you had Trump calling Georgia, which is why you had, Trump, putting pressure on Arizona, which is why you saw Trump in the campaign really doing the full court press on states not to certify their electors, and why you had the Jim Jordans of the world out there really pushing hard to not, because they wanted to break precedent. They wanted to break the Electoral Act, the Electoral Count Act. They wanted to break the procedure so that they could then do what they wanted to do, which was get it into either the Senate vote or into the House vote. Now, what they were saying is, how the first step would have worked is the vice president, who would have been presiding over it, or the Senate pro tempore, which would have been Chuck Grassley. They would begin to count the ballots, and they would start going with Alabama, and they would go in alphabetical order as they're supposed to. But then they would get to Arizona, claiming that there were alternate electors, and that they would announce that multiple slates of electors, and that they were going to defer their decision on those until the end. Evidently, they claimed this would have been the first break in the act, the Electoral Count Act, which would then have broken the precedent, the procedure, and all this stuff, and given them the opportunity to do some other stuff. Now they say that 7 states had disputed electors. So what they were going to do is, under the 12th Amendment, they were going to throw them out. And then they were going to just count the ones that they believed were officially certified. What Mike Pence and the Republicans what Mike Pence was going to say was the official count. And what would have happened, instead of having 538 electors, you would end up with 454, because you would throw those 7 states out. And at that point, they said, look, Trump has the majority of those electors. Pence would, strike the gavel, Trump was reelected. Pence would strike the gavel, Trump would be elected by a 232 to 222 electoral vote. Now they'd say, okay, the Democrats are going to lose their mind. They're going to be all upset. They'd say, okay, now what we'll do instead is we'll just throw it to the House of Representatives. And this was the big balloon that they floated back in November. That, we're not going to get to the 270. We're going to take it to the House of Representatives, where we know the Republicans control 26 states. They didn't control the number in the House, but it was one vote, one state. And they knew that the numbers were on their side. And they said, this is just like Adams and Jefferson. And nobody knows the history of Adams and Jefferson because you didn't learn it in school. So you go, oh, yeah, Adams, Jefferson. Oh. And then that would be how they would go about it. And they go, well, if that's not enough, if that isn't enough, then what you do is you have someone like Ted Cruz or someone like Rand Paul, have them demand that the Electoral Count Act doesn't constrain the Senate from making their own rules. And they basically make up their own rules, support the alternate slates, and then go back to the original number, of which now Biden lost states that he won. And they recertify for the states because these state legislatures would then be able to, back like they had to do back in the past, vote for presidents. They would be able to steal this. And you go, but would the American people have bought it? The truth is, I believe they would have. All of this, though, centered around Mike Pence. So if you're wondering, because a lot of people were wondering, why the animus towards Mike Pence? Why did they build a gallows and go try and hang Mike Pence? Why all of this anger and hatred towards someone who's basically just, Trump's lap boy? Why the animus? Why the anger? Why the threats, the intimidation? Because they understood this. The right wing was spinning all of this. The trial balloons were all floated. Right wing talk radio was a tizzy with this stuff. The conspiratorial underground was huge into this. They knew Mike Pence was the key, and Trump, look, it's not even like they were trying to hide it. I mean, that's the thing. When you do your treason, you do it right out in front of the public. Much like they did on January 6th. So on January 6th, they were trying to, one, intimidate Mike Pence into doing what they wanted him to do, but two, break the system, stop the vote, break the Electoral College Act, and then, maybe get this into the court system, because ultimately it could have ended up in front of the court, the Supreme Court, which, where do you think the Trumpkin judges would go on this? So they really thought this out. They gamed out how they were going to steal this last election. And look, I was having a conversation with someone today, and someone asked me, why isn't this bigger news? I go, because the American people don't understand it, and two, don't care. The Trumpkins would have been thrilled because our guy won. He's a tough guy, fighting for the party, fighting for country. Democrats would have howled a little bit. They'd have filed lawsuits. They would have followed the rule of law, even though the rule of law right now with the Roberts Court seems to be a little tilted in that way, because they didn't seem to get all that upset, in 2000 when the Republicans stopped the recount in California, or in Florida. They didn't bother, getting all upset when Merrick Garland's Supreme Court seat was stolen. A lot of little gas, little air, little something, but nothing into the streets. And I look at this as this moment of, I think this should be a story, because this is undoing 220 years of electoral sanity on a certain level, of bloodless transfers of power. All for a guy who lost by almost 8 million votes. And truly did lose on every front. They have tried every judicial argument possible. They've pursued the big lie at every opportunity, and still are. And you go, well, this is just an anomaly. No, this is the Republican Party. This is who they've been for a long time. And someone reminded me today, going back to when Clinton, just eviscerated Bob Dole. There were people back then going, no, Clinton cheated. They stuffed the ballot box. They've always claimed this kind of victimhood. They've just never had a candidate like the last guy who was willing to take that and embrace it and continue to run with it. He's still calling people to try and overturn the 2020 election that has been certified for months now. The kind of grievance insanity that we see out of this party is dangerous, because there is no level at which they won't stoop to hold on to power. And evidently nothing Trump can do will turn them from him. I mean, I look at what's going on in Ohio. You got a guy, Ohio State football star, this Albert Gonzalez, who, walked on water until he had the audacity to turn on Trump and actually say, we need to hold this guy accountable. This was a rising star in the Republican Party. This was a rising star in Ohio politics. This was, like I said, a guy who walked on water. He, from what I understand, beat Michigan. And all you got to do in Ohio is play for the Buckeyes and beat Michigan, and you have almost God status. They are throwing him off the cloud because he had the audacity to go against the guy who literally was part of a coup attempt. And I have Republican friends who go, no, that they were just trying every possible avenue. They were just fighting for themselves. And that's what this will play. So the reason it didn't get more coverage today is, one, it's not news. We all knew about it. It's all right in front of us. This is not new. And it's like all the things that happened in the last administration. We knew about all of them. There was a little bit of outrage, and then we got the confirmation. Yeah, it actually happened. Oh, well, it happened. The question is, where do we go from here? If there's no allegiance to this country or to the rule of law or to precedent or to history, if it really is all just about grabbing power and grabbing it by the throat and strangling it, what are we left with? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Is it a big deal? Does this 6-point plan matter? Or is it, water under the bridge, Rick? Water under the bridge. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives them voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.